Greetings and welcome in. It is August 25th. We are back again on the Sports Shuffle. I am, of course, Flying Ryan Gokers, along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin here.
And I may or may not be trying to get a trade while we do this. So we'll see.
Multitasking.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think I'm just going to hold off, though. Yeah. Yeah, you ask someone like, hey, what do you want for this player? And they go, make an offer. It's like, I'm asking what you want so I can make an offer or decline trying to waste my time. But yeah, that's been, give or take my day of fantasy.
Of course, we had the day of James Robinson, the hype, or of course, he shot up the charts along with Carlos Hyde, because basically on the Jags, you have Robinson, Hyde, and then you have the other two guys that I really don't think are going to be relevant unless you're in a very, very deep league.
Yeah, James Robinson is actually the reason all this trade stuff started. In a group chat I have, the person with James Robinson was offered some pretty terrible stuff, which I will get to in my final thoughts. But yeah, his value has skyrocketed with the Travis Etienne news, who will be out for an extended period of time. That broke yesterday. I think we covered it a little bit yesterday. One news and note I do want to call out specifically is Sony Michel was traded today to the LA Rams. Something I predicted last night he would have happen is that he would end up with the Rams. I didn't necessarily say a trade, but hey, I'm not going to fight it.
Somehow I didn't think it was going to be the fact that Teddy Bridgewater was named starting QB, as I didn't think that was breaking news. Noteworthy.
Check the tape. I called that last night in one of the two podcasts we did. I am happy Teddy Bridgewater got that job, as I picked him up in some dynasty leagues when he got traded to Denver, and at least now I have that viable option as backup. But we are here today to talk general draft strategy. We're going to go over some commandments of fantasy football that Joel's found. Go over those. We'll kind of critique and debate those, I assume. And yeah, we're going to just kind of go from there. So let's start with those commandments. I don't know what this is going to lead to, but it could be a good place to start the conversation.
So go ahead and just 1 to 10, pick a number, and I'll toss it out there.
Oh, I think we just start 1 to go 10. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Or
else it doesn't make sense. It'll be like, remember, at the end of the season, be nice to your teammates. And then you go back, it's like, kill them all in the draft. And you're like, no.
Okay, so you want to...
order usually makes sense.
You want to be boring and sequential. Okay, we can be boring and sequential. Sigh.
I'm assuming there's logic to the order they put them in. That's all. Unless it's not well done.
1. Thou shalt honor thy superstitions.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not one I follow. With fantasy, the only real superstition I have is when we do our live drafts, I wear my Flaming Flamingos jersey. Not this one, but it's similar. I made it for the team, but I do it for the team where we're drafting it live, and wearing the team colors actually makes some semblance of sense. But all in all, that's not so much a superstition as so much like, hey, I got this jersey for a reason. Yeah, I've never been really superstitious. I just pay attention on Sunday morning, put my stuff in order. I know the way I put on my socks, the way I sit on the couch, and what I had for breakfast does not affect how the Dolphins play. It does not affect how my fantasy players go. And I'm a goaltender for hockey. Like, goaltenders are typically very superstitious. I'm not. Like, I don't even put my pads on the same order, other than, pants, pads, skates, because you have to, or else you can't get everything else over. I guess maybe my biggest superstition for hockey is I have to put the pegs in under the goal so it doesn't move. I always start on the right, but that's also, I think, just because I'm right-handed. Not superstitious at all.
All right, next one that's a little bit more not so out there.
Before we go on, I do have one other superstition. I double tap a plane before I get on it, which is just kind of a weird thing. Any weird superstitions on your end that you feel like sharing with the class?
Not really. That comes to my brain, maybe, other than, I like eating maybe a pizza or something. Other than that, not really.
All right. So number 1, we don't really follow. Number 2,
and this one I have to say that I'm guilty of not following it, because I just sort of tend to draft based on ADP, who I tend not to really want to draft. But thou shalt know thy league setting and roster positions. I know
Very
this is something that I know I sort of tend to be out there with, because I just sort of am drafting based sort of on intuition and feel, as opposed to staying inside the numbers, which is something that is always like ugh to me.
Drafting on pure ADP will get you into trouble sometimes because people like Sony Michelle, who haven't been drafted for crap this far, in 2 days when we do these drafts, these ADPs are not going to skyrocket very, very fast. Knowing your stuff is going to help you quite a bit. Definitely know your league settings. Know if you are PPR. Know if you have a super flex, because if you can start 2 quarterbacks, you have an advantage by starting 2 quarterbacks. The value of quarterbacks rises. If you know it's PPR, players like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, who have a heavy pass volume at running back, have a lot more value than a Nick Chubb, a Derrick Henry, and players like Jonathan Taylor, not really a pass back. He doesn't really get the receiving work. So knowing where you're able to get your points, if you have a bonus for tight end receptions, as I'm in one league where it's 2 points per reception by the tight end. We have a guy in the league who was second place with Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle last year because he knows the league format. I've been trying to rip Waller away from him for a few months now, actually, but hasn't happened quite yet. But know your league settings and then draft based on what you want. We'll go more into the draft strategy here in a little bit once we're done with the commandments and talk about all of that. But Joel, number trace.
This one that for sort of goes into the whole thing about why someone will wait on a quarterback is thou shalt honor thy running backs and wide receivers.
Yes, as we mentioned yesterday, there's a lot of depth at quarterback. Depending on your league, there are quarterbacks that, Pat Mahomes may be a 6th, 7th round pick. If everybody waits and plays it the smart way, get your depth at other positions, then have a quarterback run, it could wait. A lot of leagues, you're going to have somebody go, oh, I can get Pat Mahomes in round 2. Boom. They jump the shark. Then round 3, oh, well, he's gone. The next best one, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, they're going to be the next ones off the board. So I got to jump. You'll have people overreact. Again, you can start a draft by taking Kelsey in the first round, Mahomes in the second round, and try your best from there. But it's going to be very, very difficult to put a coherent team. If you draft in the first 6 rounds, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, you have your 2 starting running backs, your 2 starting wide receivers, and a flex and a backup to cover for buys and injuries, and you're off to a good start. You can go into the quarterback pool, you can go into the tight end pool, you can keep in those 2 running back and receiver pools if you'd like, but you have a lot more flexibility at that point. Whereas if you go early for quarterback or for tight end, you're then playing catch up in a lot of ways. For whether it's running back or wide receiver, you're playing catch up.
This next one, I'm sure, is something that I don't need to bring up, that you probably tend to do anyway. Remember thy waiver wire day and keep it holy. If you are in a fantasy football league, that night before the waiver wire day is when you are doing your homework, you're doing your research, you're figuring out how much fab you want to lay out, and you are looking, are there any targets this week?
In general, with me, yes, know that day. Most of them will be Wednesday. There are a few that process Wednesday night into Thursday morning. A lot of them will do Tuesday into Wednesday morning. In general, after that Monday night football game is going on, I'm usually already looking ahead. My scores are not going to be that drastic. I'm not going to be like, oh man, I really got to, where am I going to get my points tonight? It's like, I know my 2 leagues that are still up for grabs. I'll keep an eye on them, but I'm looking at those waivers. I'm looking at what's out there, getting my fab ready, because I don't want to get busy on Tuesday, forget to do it. And then Wednesday's like, oh man, this guy I really wanted just went for $1 because I didn't pay attention. So again, know your league settings. This is an example of that as well. Know your waiver date, know your format. I looked at the standings from last year. I think half the league didn't use $1 of fab budget in the 16-team league, which, if you think about it, is a really, really bad strategy, because all I have to do is bid $1 to bid over what they're going for. And the whole reason we did this is because the year before somebody complained, "Oh, well, I can't get it," because if you made a claim, you went to the bottom of the list. And if the people at top aren't making a claim, you keep going to the bottom. And the bad teams are the ones that keep making the claim.
I remember that.
So I said, okay, you know what? In the effort of fairness, because we don't want the worst team to get everybody off the waivers, because that's not fair either. I said, in the effort of fairness, we will do a fab budget. You bid what you want, you win or lose. You get $100 for the season. If you burn it all on one guy week one, good job, you're out of fab. You can do that. If you want to say, hey, I'm going to put $5 or so every week and just try and, nickel and dime my way to a title, you can do that too. If you want to use none, that's up to you. But knowing that system, knowing in general the value of players that are on those waiver wires, and most importantly, like Joel said, when it's going to process, putting in a waiver claim on a Wednesday after the waivers of process is going to put you at a disadvantage, because all the best players, in theory, are going to be gone.
And that sort of ties into your comment about how many folks did not spend any fab. This ties into the next commandment. Thou shalt play out thy entire season.
Yes, part of the reason this draft is a live draft is because we have people every year that are competing from start to finish. They're constantly setting a good lineup. It's the example I'm trying to make the standard in our 16-teamer, which is why for the last couple of years we've been booting people who have inactive lineups, even if it's only for a couple weeks here and there. If I go through your roster and go, hey, you played an injured T.Y. Hilton and you played an injured running back of whatever nature, and you had two viable options on your bench that you should have played in that place. And oh, by the way, those injuries were known. It wasn't like a Sunday morning at 11:30. Okay, breaking news: Keenan Allen and Zeke Elliott are out this week, and you're like, oh crap, I can't do anything.
People have known about that 72 hours prior.
A couple years ago, T.Y. Hilton was out for 4 weeks. He was in someone's starting lineup all 4 weeks. I'm sorry, you gotta go. So play your league out. And the best way to do this is when you have a good group of people, put something on the line for first. Could be a stupid little trophy. Could be a monetary prize. Everybody pays in. Could just be a championship ring you buy and say, hey, whoever wins, you win the ring. You keep the ring. It's like a $40 thing. Not a big deal. Doesn't have to be super flashy. And put something on the line for the loser. In a lot of our leagues, we have a last place trophy. If you fail, you get the toilet bowl or you get the golden plunger, which is still my favorite trophy I've ever seen. I don't want it. My wife is in this league. She's not allowed to win it either. It's a family league. No, it's in Massachusetts. It is a plunger, small plunger, glued to a piece of wood, a screw up into the wood of the stick, and it's spray painted gold. And it's the golden plunger for your horrible, horrible season. I have to get a new inscription on that, though, because we changed the format of the league again.
Next one, thou shalt not be afraid to use thy waiver priority.
Well, this goes back to, if you're not in a fab league, know your priority. Is it going to be worst team first place team last? Or is it going to be, hey, if you make a claim, you go to the bottom? Because if that is the case and you have great priority, don't waste it on a kicker or a defense. Wait until something is valuable to pick up, because you can pick up a defense at the bottom very, very easily. I've seen a lot of people, they get to the top of that thing and, oh, my defense is on bye. It's like, no, pick something else up, drop, then go grab a defense later. Use your priority well to get something of value, but know where your priority is, and then maybe, plan ahead as much as you can.
Here's an interesting commandment. Thou shalt never lose a matchup intentionally.
Yes, this would be grounds for expulsion in all leagues except for possibly this vampire one, because there's a strategy there. Going back to the vampire league, if you lose to the vampire, they can take somebody from your starting lineup. That's the key. You can bench studs to protect them. Other than a vampire league, if you are throwing matchups, I get it in a dynasty. It's like, oh man, my team's terrible. If I lose, I might get the number 1 pick. I don't like it. I get how that happens, but if you're in a redraft, spoil someone's season if you're in the bottom. Trust me, I've had a bad year. I finished 11th out of 12th, and I was that close to the golden plunger. I would love the fact if I knocked the guy who was in 6th place the last week of the regular season out of the playoffs. That to me would make it worth being terrible all year. So play out your schedule with the intent to win. If there's no strategic advantage, especially, like, again, redraft. Oh, well, why throw the season just because you don't feel like losing? It's like, okay, or you just lose. If you're in Dynasty, I get there's a strategic point of tanking, and in Vampire Leagues, protecting your players. But other than that, play your schedule, play to win as often as you can, every single week if possible. Some teams just can't win.
And the next to last commandment, this one definitely can be hard. Thou shalt not overreact to any single performance.
Yes, I have had some weeks where on the Thursday night game, I have a monster lead and I go, it's over. There's no coming back. I think there was one year I had Tyreek Hill in the Chiefs defense, and I came out of Thursday night was about 70 points. And I'm going, oh, you're toast. I haven't even got my best players going other than Tyreek. I've got plenty of weapons. Your team's not that good. I lost. The guy put up 165 and beat me by 7, but I lost. And you can overreact to a single performance and get too high or too low. Just remember, it's fantasy. It's not over till it's, pretty much over.
It's not over until it's the stat correction.
Yeah. Now, there are times you can tell it's done a little early. Like, oh, I've got one guy going on Monday night. I'm down by 68 points. Cool. At that point, it's over. But don't get too high or too low because you had one guy go off. Because guess what? If you do that, almost always the other team's going to have someone go off just as big.
And before I get into the now 4 extra ones, thou shalt always check the drop players list.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. Keep an eye on this. Somebody at some point is going to make a mistake. They're either going to drop a good player because of need. They're going to react to an injury. Well, maybe this guy's only out 5 weeks, but I need the roster spot. And they'll drop somebody. It's like, well, I'll hold them for 4 weeks and I'll wait for him to come back and then I'll beat you with him. Know what's being dropped. Keep an eye on it because those waiver claims, once they're dropped, remember, he goes back on waivers for a day or two. Again, know your league settings and your waiver rules is one of those that we just talked about. But keep an eye on that. You can find some real gems on that waiver wire list after the drops, after the waivers clear. So keep an eye on that.
Okay. Now here four that you always talk about drop players, but actually 3, not 4. Sorry. Thou shalt not blindly trust coach speak.
Definitely don't blindly trust what coaches say. Coaches, especially this time of the year, tell me if you've heard this before. Oh, he's in the best shape of his life. He's never looked better. This guy's a stud. He is all over it. He's on the same page. This, that, blah, blah, blah. Never seen a player like him before. And then in the regular season, he's sitting on the sidelines. Don't get too amped up. The coaches are there to build up their players, especially coaches like Pete Carroll, who's super player excited. Just don't worry about all the coach speak. It's half of it's BS, and the other half is only 50% right.
Now, here's one that I can understand sometimes, but on the other hand, I sort of am questioning where this one came from, and I sort of would like your input on this. Thou shalt never draft handcuffs.
Depends on your league. I'm not typically a handcuff drafter. Now, I will say if you take someone like a Saquon Barkley this year coming off a known injury, it's not the worst idea to late in the draft take Devontae Booker just in case something happens to him. But in general, depending on your league size, the bigger the league, the more important it is to do this because you don't have as many options. If you're in a 10-team league, you're probably going to draft enough depth to let your best player possibly get injured and have a valuable replacement. And a lot of the handcuffs in small leagues are available on the waivers. So it might be one of those things where, okay, I have to blow a lot of fab because I lost my guy. I have to get his backup. I would say if you're drafting a running back in the first round, it's probably a decent idea to try and get the guy late if you can. A Tony Pollard who's going to be going in round 9 or round 10, probably not. But Devontae Booker was your last pick to cover Barkley. I'm trying to think of another backup. A.J. Dillon if you have Aaron Jones. Whoever the backup is to Derrick Henry, just in case something happens, just to protect that. Alexander Madison for Dalvin Cook kind of thing. It's not going to be the best, but if you take him with your last pick, you have the option of holding him. I know we put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth last year. Dalvin Cook's out.
Pepperidge Farm remembers. Oh boy, does Pepperidge
4
Farm
points.
remember.
4 points with Dalvin Cook out against a very, very bad run defense.
Wow, but that was bad.
It was bad. It happens, and we move on. We overcome. But I don't like the handcuffing. It only really works for running backs anyways. But it's kind of a risk assessment type of move as well. If you have someone like Christian McCaffrey, their backup might be worth getting, but no.
Yeah, after Madison, that was sort of a Elton John turn on those sad songs moment. That was just a woof. Yeah. But of course, talking about Alexander Madison, also, thou shalt not fall in love with last year's stats.
There is the key. You will see people draft Stephon Diggs in the first round this year. Is Stephon Diggs worth a first round pick? Probably not. I say that because he led the league in passing, he led the league in targets, he led the league in pretty much every receiving category you could have. That is hard to replicate. That's why there's only been a handful of rushers that led the league 2 years in a row, which is part of why I'm pretty down on Derrick Henry this year, because I think 3 years in a row is almost impossible. Michael Thomas led the league in receptions, set the NFL record, and then fell off a cliff. The Bills added some weaponry. They're going to use the run game more. If you chase the numbers from last year, this is part of why I'm out on Josh Allen. It's part of why I'm out on Justin Herbert, as we talked about yesterday. I consider them bust because they're just going too early. Don't chase the numbers. You want a successful team, you draft according to what you expect next year's draft board to look like. If you think J.K. Dobbins next year is going to be a top 5 pick, you make sure you get J.K. Dobbins at some point because, well, he's going to be good enough that people are going to chase the points next year. All these young guys, Swift, Gibbons, Dobbins, your CEH, your rookies that didn't break their legs. If you didn't get a decent value, your second, third round pick, so you think, hey, this guy might be a top 3 pick next year. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for Dalvin Cook, who was number 1 or number 2 in the league in points. You're not looking for Alvin Kamara, who was number 1 because of a 56-point week 16 performance. You're looking for that guy in the second, third round that might jump up and next year be that, oh man, I got to get him, your Jonathan Taylor types. Last year you take him, you were happy the second half of the year. This year he's going in the top 5 or top 6. You're not getting the value and he may not produce as much. So you want to draft those guys. I'm going to say one of the sleepers that I was really, really down on last year and had a lot of was Chris Carson. I think they're going to start running the ball properly in Seattle, and he may be someone that you really like getting in the 4th round. So draft based on next year's draft board, not last year's point total, is a very good point.
Yeah, I was really getting into the whole using strength of schedule for matchups until I read something that said strength of schedule will only tell you what happened last year, not what's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
Next to last one, and this one is more of a line of for commissioners. Thou shalt have thy championship on week 16.
Week 17 now. Let's be clear. Week before.
Week 17, which is now week 16.
Let's just simplify it. Thou shalt have the championship the week before the final week of the season. I agree with this for the most part. It is tough to give up that extra week of playing. And the sitting of players has become less frequent, but if last year you said, "Hey, I've got to the championship game on the back of Kelsey Mahomes stack," and then they both sit against the Chargers, you go, "Oh crap, I have." There's no making up for Kelsey. You can pick up a quarterback probably easy enough to be decent. You can't make up for Kelsey unless you already have someone on your team, and you shouldn't have somebody on your team able to make up for Kelsey because you already have Kelsey. So
That's the type of week you're going to end up having Lamar Jackson sit, and you're going to end up being starting somebody like Kirk Cousins or some
or worse,
backup.
or
Yeah.
worse. Yeah. I'm not in any leagues other than the ESPN leagues that do a 2-week championship, which is ridiculous. The playoffs are 2 weeks for each round, but only 4 teams get in. It's weird. So the playoffs start 15-16 and then 17-18, which I don't like, but I don't make the rules on those. I'm not the commissioner. Other than
And
that, I avoid that week 18 now. Week 17 in the past, week 18 now, championship game, just in case it ruins it.
the final one, the absolute one, the most important one more than any one of these others, just have fun.
Yeah, I half agree with that. For me, it's just have fun and destroy the souls of your opponents. Frankly, I'm in a lot of leagues. I have not won a title in any of my main leagues since
Sort of,
2017. I did win the ESPN one, the one at the bottom of my board. I did win in 19. So that, I guess that's
so
something.
like the
I've
kids
been
show,
close.
so like the kids show, you want to send everyone to the shadow realm, right?
Yeah, I want to be the one winning titles. Like I said, next year I want to get all of this crap off of here and just have trophies. Because that I think would be a better aesthetic than signed helmets and jerseys and all that. You know, I want to win the titles, I want the trophies, I want the prizes, whatever it is.
And
Hey, if there's
and
no prize, I still want to be like, I beat all of you. I
so
want it.
like Coach Herm, you play to win the game,
Play
something
to
like that.
win the game.
You don't play to
But
just play it.
no, I play to win the game, but I play with people that are competitive, which makes it more fun. If you've ever been in those random leagues where you're paying attention, it's like 4 weeks in a row, you're playing a guy who has got an invalid lineup, 2 guys on bye, a guy who's injured, and like, well, cool, this is a bye week. I won. Awesome. It's not fun. So being in a competitive league for me is what makes it fun. Winning those leagues makes it better.
I'll have to agree because even though it was fun to win the Flea Flicker League, it was one of those random leagues that you're just like, okay, sort of a kind of a throwaway. It was like, yeah, okay, I won, but really didn't know anybody that I won against.
Yeah, if I win a league of randoms, which I've played enough of them usually this year so far, I've only got the one
Winning's
title.
better than losing, granted, but
It's better
still.
than losing. But usually I plan enough randoms, and one of those I'll take down, and I don't count that. If it's not on the board behind me or one of the dynasty leagues I'm in, I don't really care if I win it. Like, I beat a bunch of random people, half of which didn't play. Yay! No, sorry. I don't get excited about that. But if I win the League of Winning, I actually won the League of Winning, the Family Feud, and I think it was our 4-team league at the time. The year I won 3, and that was 17. So I'm due for some winning. I got real cocky a couple years ago and made a bet that I definitely didn't win, saying I was going to take 2 of those. Didn't happen.
You cocky? I can never believe that.
No, not always. Usually I'm pretty humble, but that one was not a good look. So hopefully I'll get at least one of the ones behind me this year, and we'll have some hardware to show, not just helmets.
So I hope the commandments have helped everyone to sort of, oh, okay, it's sort of the information that we all know. It's all out there, but it's just sort of presented in a different way that sort of spices things up a little bit.
Yeah. So next we'll go to our general draft strategy discussion. This is what we like to do in drafts, some things we don't like to do in drafts. I will say this, Joel, and I don't know if you ever tried this strategy, the 0 RB strategy.
Can't say I ever have. That would just be, I think, too risky for me in general because I'd be like, okay, because you're banking on, because I know what to say, that the points need to come from somewhere. Doesn't matter where the points need to come from, because I've had those absolutely insane times that you pick somebody up and you're just like, one year you go, how am I scoring this many points? This is insane. So of course your thing is, you have the right tight ends, you have the right wide receivers. It doesn't matter. But I don't know. I would just be very, very cautious. I'm probably too cautious of personality to do that.
The premise of the zero RB is that you will focus on getting a stacked group of wide receivers. You have three that will be your starter, your 1 and 2, and your flex every week. You will have one of those top tight ends, and you'll get a stud quarterback. Then you will focus on the running back position. Now, if you drafted early, you may have fallen into gold because you're like, hey, Myles Gaskin fell to the 7th round, and I picked up James Robinson in the 6th. It's like, well, hell, you got two starting running backs.
So it's not total zero RB. It's just zero RB.
Oh, no. You do draft running backs. You do not leave the position blank. That's just not going to make sense. You have to get points at those positions, but you focus on everything else besides kicker and defense because those are irrelevant. You focus on getting supreme depth at wide receiver. You focus on getting a stud at tight end, a stud at quarterback. The theory being, I'm going to dominate these positions so much I can overcome the deficit we're going to experience at running back. However, if it falls perfectly, you do this, and then you get a James Robinson and a Myles Gaskin, and then you pick up one of the rookies that pops off like a Javonte Williams or a Michael Carter or Trace Sermon, one of those guys who's not going early like Najee Harris, and they go off. It's like, wow, my team is absolutely stacked. However, you miss on those running backs. You get, I got Devin Singletary, and I've got I'm trying to think of someone else. Or, hey, you get one of those rookies as your number 2 who doesn't pan out, or maybe Mike Davis falls and he busts. Then you're hurting because now you're putting up 2 points in the running back position. You're not getting anywhere near enough to compensate with the rest of the lineup. So not a strategy I like. I do know people who have done it. I don't know anybody who's won with it. People online swear they have. I am not that way. For me, I like getting 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, if not all 3, because I want that depth. I know there's a decent chance one of my guys is going to get hurt. I know at some point both of them are going to have a bye week, and I want to have at least 3 guys that I can count on. Starters, you get 2, and a flex. Okay, I've got 3 guys I can play every single week. I believe wide receivers have a lot more depth, so I do focus on them 4th through 9th round. I'll sprinkle in the tight end. I'll sprinkle in the quarterback at some point, mid to late round, 7 to 13, and I'll build it that way. Usually, my wide receivers are one of my weaker points. My quarterback is okay. My tight end is okay. My running backs are great. I have done it where I've taken Tyreek Hill and DeAndre Hopkins and then made a trade for Chris Godwin, but my running backs were Leonard Fournette and somebody else who was not very good that year. And it just, hey, I got 3rd place because it was the league I always get 3rd place, the one we do the live draft in. So for me, early on, go running back heavy, take the sure things or the guys you fully expect to ascend. Like last year, I said in the 16-team league, pick number 11, I took Kenyon Drake. I didn't like it at the time. It blew up in my face. I would have been better off taking a sure thing at wide receiver or a better running back in that position. Take the sure thing in round 1. Get as many of the points as you can with that player. Avoid the 40% or so bust rate in the first round. You can always take shots later that could pay off. Just early on, get the sure things, get your depth at running back, wide receiver, and then let the chips fall they may with the other positions. Joel, is there any general thing you look for in a draft? I know you said earlier it's like ADP based and you kind of do it by feel, but what drives your feel? I know you took DeAndre Hopkins at number 3 last year, and it was kind of one of those like, oh, well, that's a little early, but it kind of worked out.
Just tend to sort of go with a sort of a whole stream of consciousness. I'm in the moment. I know that you have a whole bunch out there that's like spreadsheets and data sheets and this sheets and that sheets. And
Yeah.
I'm just sort of more of a go with the flow type person. Sort of, it's like, okay, I've been listening to everything, I've been reading everything, I've been watching everything. It's all sort of like the matrix has been plugged into my brain and it all just sort of pops out.
Yeah, I mean the other thing you got to keep in mind is when the draft is going on, the best laid plans can fall apart very quickly. Especially if you're trying to say, okay, I have pick number, let's say 5.
How often is it that I have this pick and damn, right before that pick, whoop, they're gone.
Well, I can go back to our draft last night, the best ball. I said, hey, I'm going to get Carson or Montgomery with my 4th round pick. They went boom, boom right before me. And I went, oh, crap. I really need a running back. What do I do? The best laid plans of I'm going to get somebody who I trust went to crap. I got to take Miles Sanders here because I need a running back. So you want to plan as much as you can ahead of time and try and know where the punches are going to come from. But if you're picking at the front or the back of the round where you have so much time, take your guy when they're there. Don't worry if the ADP is 15 off. If you say, all right, I took my Christian McCaffrey at number 1. At number 2, I'm going to take Justin Jefferson. But you know who I'm really high on is this middle of the 4th round guy that will not be back when it gets to me. Take him at in your 3rd pick if you are that confident in them. Don't take the chances. If you want somebody, go get them. There is no wrong way to draft. I want that to be very, very clear. Draft your way. It is your team, and nobody wins the league on draft day. If you don't play the waiver wires, if you don't set good lineups, you can still blow it. Like we had a team in a dynasty league that fell apart because half our league wanted out because it was not a format they enjoyed. They were loaded, but they were vulnerable. They won the title, but they won a lot of games. They were the 4th seed going into the playoffs out of 8. They won a lot of games by 2-3 points. They won the championship by about 8. It wasn't a dominant, they couldn't screw up, but they didn't do the best they could have. There's a lot of times you'd be like, oh, I drafted a stacked team, and then an injury happens, you make a bad trade, and all of a sudden your team is just not very good. So don't get discouraged as well after your draft. You look at it and go, oh, I don't like that. You have waivers, you have trades, you have all kinds of things you can try to do to improve your roster that will help you, but at the same time, not happen at the draft. Don't get discouraged if you're Yahoo or NFL.com. Draft analysis says you got a C- and you're going to win 2 games. Those things are complete garbage. They do it based on value versus they do it based on value versus ADP and total expected points. So if you go and just draft, I'm going to tell you how to break the Yahoo algorithm. Draft based on points predicted. You will always have a good grade. Period. It's all it is. And given late rounds, maybe you do look at the projections a little bit more than the early rounds, but if you want to win,
late rounds are dartboard throws anyway.
I mean, after round 10, you can afford, by this time, you should have 3 or 4 solid running backs, 3 or 4 solid wide receivers, at least a starting tight end, maybe an extra somewhere, or a quarterback. Rounds 11, 12, and 13, you can say, you know what? I think Brashad Perriman's going to really be great for the Ravens. I'm going to snag him here just in case. And guess what? If he's great, that's fantastic. If he's garbage through 3 weeks, you dump him on the waivers and you pick someone else up who is doing a little bit better. You can take those chances. Anybody who took Justin Jefferson late last year probably did pretty well if they waited the 2 weeks it took for him to properly break out. Now, if you had bad injuries and you had this and that, maybe you dropped him early, but understand you're not winning on draft day. You are not winning on draft day. It's fun to look at the projections. It's fun to say, oh, look, my team's projected to beat you. I'm projected to win the league. If you ignore the waivers, you ignore your lineup, you ignore making the right decisions, you're still not going to win. So again, when it comes to drafting, have fun, draft smart. Don't draft rashly. And if you're going to do research, make sure you're doing current research. My wife is getting into fantasy football a little bit more. as we go along. She's joining the league we draft fully in live, and the family league is technically her family that I married into, who are in this league for the most part. She was doing research yesterday while I was doing podcasts. She showed me the list of names she wrote down. Half of them were retired because she just went Google NFL wide receivers. So who popped up? Well, it's going to be the people in the news, which included some guys like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, but it also included some guys like recent Hall of Fame inductee Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, who may or may not be coming back because he said, hey, right now I don't have the urge to play. When she did tight end, yeah, you had your top end guys, but you also had Greg Olson, who is now a commentator for Fox. Do your research, but do it the right way. So I said, you know what? I'm going to help you. And I printed off an ESPN cheat sheet and said, just go off of this. You're on your own for injuries. You're on your own for trades. You're on your own for this, that, and the other. But at least you're going to have current rosterable players on this list. It's going to be interesting. So know your league, know your draft, do your research, and make sure it's not complete garbage. And that's basically in general how to draft, how to do smart things. And again, know your league settings. If you know it's PPR, your wide receivers have more value. If it's standard, your running backs have more value. If it's point per completion, like one of my dynasty leagues, quarterbacks are a gold mine. Take that into account. So with that, that's going to wrap up our general draft strategy for today. Tomorrow we'll be back with some mock drafts, possibly a live draft around 4:15, but that's kind of dependent on the weather and whether or not my golf league championship match gets rained out. If it does, we'll be here. If Joel's not available, I'll do it myself and kind of broadcast it solo. If he's available, we'll go over it together.
Sort of like one of the poems, I forget who wrote it, but it said, whether the weather be fine or whether the weather be not. Well, whether the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I could do one of these where Joel is the draft board and I'm in the corner if he can't do it. So we have options that we have, but we will be on to about the same time tomorrow doing our mock drafts.
Would that be Wonder Twin Powers Activate, shape of a draft board?
Yeah, anybody want to get sick real quick? Let's wee!
Okay, yeah, I am.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for you to get a little dizzy doing that. So hopefully I didn't give anybody a seizure there.
Nah.
That did make my head a little dizzy, and I was the one in full control of it. So anyways,
when we say Sport Shuffle, we're really not trying to do it legitly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the first time we've actually done a legit shuffle on the show. Anyways, with that being said, let's go to final thoughts. Joel.
Hang on. I'm recovering from the vertigo here as
Oh, you ever go on those rides to the theme park that are just a little too violent? Whoa. Yeah, we just did that to some people, I'm sure.
Final thought is it's going to be very, very interesting to see with the New Orleans Saints and Alvin Kamara speaking about ADP, how much of an influence positively Drew Brees was on his offensive output, as we're going to have the unpredictable but definitely fiery Jameis Winston and or Taysom Hill, aka Go Gadget Man. So we'll have to see what, if any, effect the different helm of the different field marshal is the whole vertical thing just really threw me off a little bit there. The different field marshal is and what effect that has on Alvin Kamara. It will just be interesting to see. I mean, I don't think I would get to the point, as I actually saw somebody online say that he's undraftable and he's staying away from him. And I'm going like, okay, that I can understand being cautious with my cautious personality, but that's a bit much to say that Alvin Kamara is undraftable because Breeze is not there anymore. That's kind of crazy. Just sort of had to toss out the final thought there.
I'll say this. I get the concern. I'm not saying I'm going to avoid Alvin Kamara, but if Taysom Hill wins the job, he's not going at number 3 or 4 where he's normally going right now for me. He is a late first round, early second round pick because I don't trust Taysom Hill to get him the ball. I don't think he opens up the field by having the deep passing game that Jameis Winston does. And they don't use him as a proper rusher, so he's going to lose some touches in the backfield to either Latavius Murray or the new kid, Tony. So if it's Taysom Hill, I agree you don't take him as early, but I'm not going to say, man, Kamara fell to the 3rd round. I'm still not taking that bum. No, sorry. I'm going to be jumping on that like Captain America on the grenade in the first one. Yeah, nerd references. So anyways, today was an interesting day because
I'd personally rather jump on Black Widow myself. But...
Okay. We don't. Okay. Anyways, we are going to try and get that image of Joel out of our head and go on to the interesting day we had, because I'm in a few dynasty leagues, and dynasty leagues are always fun because they go year round. Everybody's got their teams. They've had their teams since really May because we had our rookie draft in May, even though one of the people in one of my leagues was like, hey, when's the draft? And we're like, it was in May, dude. What are you talking about? It's like, well, I had no picks. I just wanted to try and trade in to do it. I'm like, you didn't get the notification that the draft started, bud? No idea. Anyways, but because of the Travis Etienne injury, James Robinson has become a red-hot commodity. And somebody I know personally, someone I'm going to see in a couple days for this draft, is the owner of James Robinson in this league. And he said he had blown up with trade offers that were garbage. He said one of them was worse than the other. The first one that wasn't as bad, and it's still terrible, was James Robinson for only Marquise Brown of the Ravens. I'm pretty high on Marquise Brown this year as a sleeper. However, not over a guy who finished roughly top 5 in rushing last year for points for fantasy and now has the job all to himself. The other one was, and I'm going to quote here, was, oh, I remember now. It was Nelson Aguilar and some rookie I've never heard of for James Robinson. And I said, he could have offered you a used condom and a fully loaded doggy do bag and been just as good because that was horrible.
What would the quote by Homer Simpson, I have no idea who that is, apply to the other fella?
Yeah. If this guy doesn't know who the rookie running back or receiver, whoever it was, actually is, because I know this person knows football pretty damn well, they were a nobody. If you couldn't remember the name, they were an absolute nobody. So yeah, it's fun because you have people trying. I've been looking at trying to get Ezekiel Elliott in a different league, same kind of concept, trying to get young guys out for Zeke, trying to bolster without giving up some of my core guys. I've got Jonathan Taylor. I've got CEH. I don't want to move them. I'd rather just acquire Zeke Elliott and then put those over there. I don't know. I might still work on it. I might not. He said he wants younger or tight ends. I'm not real deep at tight end, but maybe I can figure something out. If I do, I'll make that trade, and I'll also have Zeke Elliott, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and CEH as my running backs, and I can play all 4 in a week. So maybe that's a good way to go. But we're getting into that time of year where we have trades, we have drafts, we actually have news and notes that are real. It's not just a dream. Fantasy drafts are starting, tomorrow for me.
The worst time of the year, the endless mock drafts before the draft, about the draft.
Yes.
Drafting, and we're going to be talking about the draft after the draft.
Yes, it's the worst when people are just talking about mock drafts constantly. So with that being said, tomorrow we're bringing you mock drafts. But this is our draft prep week. I mean, we did this last year.
It's different when it's March, and it's different when it's August. Yes. There are 2 different types of mock draft. There's the mock draft that, okay, we're talking about this. This is at least 8 months out. There's no hope of fantasy football. This is total, complete conjecture. And then you have 30 days or less out, and it's more there right in front of you, as opposed to, yes, this is going to happen now. This is not off in Neverland.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if you intended to set that spike for me, but it was just beautiful right there. But yes, we are going to be doing some mock drafts tomorrow, as I mentioned at the top of the show.
Occasionally we
It
do
is
stuff right.
practice. It's something we do. We did it last year, the night before our 2 drafts that are on the board that are planned out. It is something we do the night before as a way to prepare, as a way to kind of show
Twas
off
the
what
night
we're
before the
thinking.
draft and all through the house.
Yes. We will be less than 24 hours when we're doing these mock drafts tomorrow from the start of our first draft, at least at the end of them. If we start a little early, maybe not, but it's going to be fun. We're going to do the drafts on Sleeper as
The
far as
waiver
we
wire
know.
priorities were set up with care.
Yes. So we'll do them on Sleeper. We may or may not do the random draw like we did last year, where we just have like a number generator and boop, and that's where we go. I don't remember if we did that on air, actually. We might have just done that behind the scenes to get ourselves
Just
set up.
boop, boop, boop,
Just
boop, 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 boop,
there you
boop,
go.
boop, be doop, boop.
So, yeah, we will do those tomorrow,
Boop,
depending
beep,
on
boop.
the weather in Florida. And if it's raining in the afternoon, we may or may not have a live draft early afternoon. Or I might have to live draft or do my fantasy draft on the golf
Depending
course
upon
trying to
whether-
win a golf league championship, which I'm
Depending-
sure my captain won't like.
Depending on whether or not, as Garth Brooke would sing, which I promise you I won't, whether or not the thunder will roll.
Yeah. So that's going to be
Listening, I
interesting
promise.
either way. If we get rained out, then I can do the draft live and share it with all of our one viewer sometimes. And if not, then I'm going to have to find a way to be like, all right, hold on, I got to tee off. Crap, it's the 4th round. Who do I want? Screw it, give me Thielen. All right, 4. No, it's going to be interesting because that's a level of multitasking.
Just pick that Mixon guy.
No. I do want to get on, and maybe I'll do that after we wrap this up, and I'm waiting to upload this to YouTube. If you don't know, we have a YouTube channel. It is Sports Shuffle Official. We are putting all of our videos on there now. I might set a priority list and just be like, yeah, I'd rather have this guy over this guy. So if I do miss a pick or two, it's like, boop, boop, here we go. Cool. I'm so
Ryan's had fun trying to figure out the YouTube channel controls. Yay.
Hey, I'm getting there. I no longer curse when I have to go, where do I have to go to upload this effing video? But I say the full word because we're not on air, even though Facebook doesn't really care. If I say no language, we can't get monetized when we have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours watched, which will only take us about 17 to 25 years.
Only like Dr. Evil, 1 million years. Yeah.
Yeah. With that being said, do your research. Don't draft retired players, and for the love of God, offer decent trades to people, because if not, they will never trade with you ever again.
Ever.
Never. No.
Ever.
Anyways, with that, we gone.